I have a big problem with Red Dead Redemption 2, and it connects perfectly with something that I've experienced in Batman Arkham Knight. This issue in Red Dead Redemption 2 is what makes me hesitant to play the game again, but this same thing is the exact reason why I keep coming back to Arkham Knight even this far after launch. And the problem has to do with role-playing. You want to be able to fill the shoes of the character that you're portraying and living through in the game. You want to feel like Arthur Morgan and live your in-game life the same way that Arthur does. You want to be immersed into the role that you're set to fill, and when this is done correctly, you will never want to stop playing a game. And I will say, both of these games do a great job in the role-playing department. With Arthur, most of the time I feel like a badass cowboy guy, and everything I do revolves around the image of what I think Arthur would be doing. In Batman, this is really true, and I honestly sometimes am convinced that I am Batman, because we do have a lot in common, and the same body type. Red Dead Redemption 2 falls a bit short in one aspect of this though, which is emphasized even further when I play this awesome and immersive Batman game: the forced slowness. Yeah, you feel like Arthur a majority of the time when you play the game. You're killing outlaws and traveling around the wild wild west and doing cowboy things without even thinking about it. But sometimes being exactly like Arthur takes away from the enjoyment of the game. I don't want to spend 25 minutes looting bodies after every shootout, and I don't want to see the detailed animations of crafting ammo and provisions in order to get the materials I need. I don't feel like having to turn every single page in the store catalog to find what I'm looking for, and I don't have to be on a horse that has the stamina of a small toddler to feel like I'm actually traveling around the Wild West. I think the focus on realism kind of took away from the game, and while it is without a doubt one of the best games ever made, don't get me wrong, it could have been a bit more fun if it didn't force you to be so slow. Now, let's talk about Batman. The world design, pacing, storytelling, and even the movement all have the perfect amount of momentum to create the perfect balance of fun and role-playing. Yeah, Batman moves slowly, and you never really see him sprinting around awkwardly except for this scene. And in this game, that is also the case. The combat is snappy enough to make you feel like a cool superhero, but slow enough to where it feels like a real Batman fight. Other than some of the detective side missions, there really isn't much forced slowness, and everything from the cutscenes to the transitions in and out of missions, and even the stealth and detective mode helps the game to be one of the most immersive games I've ever played. It has the fun parts of role-playing as Batman without the tedium found in other games, and because of this, the game is awesome. In fact, nearly everything about Batman Arkham Knight truly emphasizes the importance of intentionality and good game design. While it's by no means a perfect game, it is one of the most badass fun games I've ever played, and it's probably the most immersed I've ever been into a fictional environment in years. But like I said, even this beauty has some major flaws. Some things that bring this game down from something that is nearly perfect to something that went through a phase of irritating the hell out of me and making me ready for the game to finish. These are all things that I'm going to address in this video because I want to show both the pros and the cons of this game. And I will say, the cons really do suck. A lot. But regardless, this game makes me feel cool, and it's evoked emotions that I've very rarely felt in games before. I always get a feeling of awe in this game when I see some of the impressive things that they've done to create such an awesome experience. Little pieces of game design that I've genuinely never seen before in a video game, and things that, if you've played the game before, you may not have even noticed. So let's dive into the shadows of the superhero detective himself and investigate why Arkham Knight is so awesome, but also a little bit flawed. I gotta start by talking about the story, where you can get a feel of the goals and objectives of this game and how it all connects to the gameplay. Basically, this dude named Scarecrow is releasing a toxin around Gotham City that messes with people's minds and makes them experience their biggest fear. Scarecrow threatens to unleash it on the whole city, causing all of the everyday citizens to evacuate and the streets of Gotham to once again be overrun with crime and grime. Your job as Batman is to stop all this crime, stop Scarecrow, and restore balance like you're the damn Avatar.
Who are you?
This guy is not very nice, and he seems to be intruding on our plans. That, my friend, is the Arkham Knight, the first guy who you gotta stop before you can even get to Scarecrow. While Arkham Knight is the focus of the game, considering he's in the title, he's really not the main villain. But he does play a huge part in the story. But where's the Joker? We all know that the Joker is the best Batman villain, and that without him, the story is just not the same. Well, don't worry about that, my friend, because he is in Arkham Knight more than you could ever imagine. You see, in the previous game, Arkham City, Joker poisons Batman with his own blood and says, "Ah, Batman, now you have a little bit of me inside of you." Well, when Batman gets exposed to this new bit of fear toxin while trying to hunt down Scarecrow, the toxin brings out this little bit of Joker in Batman. So Batman has to deal with hallucinations and voices inside his head of the lovely Joker throughout the entirety of the game, and it makes for a truly awesome and unique experience. I'll dive more into the specifics of how the story progresses and how the rug is pulled out from underneath you as we get a bit further into the video. But I want to start by talking about one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a video game: hallucinations in your head. A lot of games try this and fail miserably. The hallucination scenes in Far Cry 3 are just straight up boring, and they take you out of this cool ass world that you love into this alternate reality that has nothing to do except walk. Why do you want to participate in this slow, miserable event, watching things slowly happen, all while pulling you out of the world that you're currently in? Batman Arkham Knight, however, is one of the few games that does hallucinations correctly, and these things actually add tremendously to the overall narrative and experience. Joker constantly appears seamlessly when you least expect him to throughout your playthrough. You'll be entering a room and Joker comes out of nowhere to give you a little tidbit of information, or to deliver a witty anecdote that relates to what you're doing at the moment. And he appears out of nowhere with no loading screens or visual evidence that he's gonna do it. It is super cool, usually pretty jarring, and 100% entertaining. Since Joker's in Batman's head at all times, he could really show up and say what he wants pretty much anywhere without pulling you out of the world. Sometimes he would show up on a rooftop after a story mission, giving a monologue on his personal take on the situation, or a suggestion as to what he thinks Batman should do. Sometimes these suggestions are funny, and Joker will even throw in some Easter eggs about how, now that he's a part of you, you're gonna need to change your approach. You need to do it like Joker would. Sometimes he even appears and actually helps you out and works as a sort of tutorial guide to help you figure out what to do without forcing you to read a prompt or pull yourself out of the world to look at a menu. For example, after the first encounter that made me realize that he was in my head, I was a bit confused at what I needed to do to get out of the room. I was trapped in here with this hallucination of a Joker, and I was so early in the game that I didn't even know how to get out of the room. But then Joker hit me with this line that reminded me what to do.
Now if only we had something powerful enough to rip out a wall.
Oh, you're right. My Batmobile is remote controlled because they showed me that earlier, and I could just use it to pull the side of this room open and escape. Stuff like this happens all the time, and it's always seamless. It seems fitting. It seems like a hallucination in my head with an alter ego that's telling me what to do. The appearances of the Joker are extremely enjoyable, and I almost look forward to seeing him show up and talk about some random things or give me advice. It's awesome, and it adds an irreplaceable mechanic to the game and the story as a whole. You may love it when Joker appears in the game and gives you a good bit of entertainment, but you wouldn't want him showing up without warning in your life if he was a real person. I'm pretty sure I played against people in CSGO who act like this dude, and let me tell you, because of my amazing CSGO skills, people like this may try to find my IP address and DDoS me. So that's why I use Atlas VPN to protect myself against online weirdos and to improve my online gaming experience. Atlas VPN is used by over 6 million users worldwide as one of the best VPNs that money can buy. Their amazing VPN protects you, allows you to change your IP address to get access to region-restricted games and media, and even avoid IP bans in Minecraft when you troll a 6-year-old admin. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a huge sale where you can get 3 years of protection for $1.99 a month. You heard that right, half of that admin's age worth of VPN protection for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So check out the link in the description if you want this deal, and do it soon before it runs out. Thanks again to Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video. The way Joker appears and disappears is immersive, and it keeps you invested in the game at all times. This is a part of the reason why Batman Arkham Knight is without a doubt one of the most immersive AAA games I've ever played. Everything about this game keeps you invested, and it's one of the few games that I've played in recent years that really makes me forget about the outside world when I'm playing it. Like I said in the intro, the game does a great job at truly making you feel like Batman, and nothing is there to pull you away from that feeling. There are 0 loading screens in this game other than when you die. Everything is seamless, and you aren't being taken out of the environment to watch stuff load with little text on it every time you do something new. You can fly around the world as Batman, do a mission, catch a villain, deliver that villain to the police department, and then go back out and continue with the main story without any pauses or buffering. You can call your Batmobile while you're flying and meet it on the ground at the exact moment it arrives. Then you could jump in, drive around, enter a building, and do a side quest without having to wait. It's entirely seamless throughout the entirety of the game, and it's helped to create one of the most immersive experiences I've ever had in gaming. This immersion goes hand in hand with the Joker appearances, and the constant stimulation pulls you right into the world of Gotham City and makes you not want to leave. And this world is something truly amazing. While Gotham City in this game is never looked at as the best open world ever made, or the most realistic, or the biggest, or anything like that, it's still one of the best open world settings I've ever experienced. Yeah, a big world is always cool and exciting to explore, but sometimes things feel forced and don't necessarily fit. The thing about Gotham City, however, is that every square inch of the map makes you feel like you're really in Gotham City. The buildings stretching on the horizon, the constant rain, the crime taking place on the grimy streets below you, the Arkham Knight's drones patrolling the rooftops, the Riddler clues spread around the city, the recognizable buildings from other Batman movies and games, the military checkpoints, the kidnapped firefighters waiting to be rescued around the city, the banks being robbed by Two-Face. It all connects together like a perfect puzzle, with each piece creating what we know as Gotham City. The setting and world building is beautiful, and this connects with the design features that make this game so immersive to build off of each other and create something truly exceptional. While the world itself isn't very deep, with stuff like being able to enter all the buildings and explore alleyways and all of that, it doesn't matter. You are Batman, not a scavenger who needs to loot a city and explore buildings. Your job is to fight crime, and you don't need to be able to interact with the toilets and the Gotham City Arby's to feel like you're in the right setting. In fact, I think if there was too much detail in this world, it would actually take away from the immersion that I mentioned earlier. The world provides a beautiful canvas for you, a crime-fighting detective, to paint your goals and aspirations on. It gives you the ability to do what you need to do to protect it, without making you feel like you need to learn everything that the city has to offer. You travel around Gotham City, usually by the rooftops. You have a bunch of gadgets that make combat and traveling a lot easier. The most useful is the grappling hook that you can use to shoot up on top of every building, bridge, and object in the city to get a better view of where you need to go next, and to get the momentum needed to fly around from above. This is the best way to travel around the map, and it is by far the most fun and badass. It helps make you feel like Batman, especially when you combine the glide mechanic with aerial takedowns in combat. It is so sick. But we all know Batman has a sick car called the Batmobile, and Arkham Knight makes sure that you don't forget about it. A lot. Like they shove it down your throat at every given moment. In the early game, I was hyped to be able to drive the Batmobile. This thing is a literal tank, and it's probably the coolest and most advanced Batmobile in any Batman media ever. You could literally transform it into battle mode and blow up all of the military vehicles that the Arkham Knight placed around Gotham with powerful cannons and missiles and all sorts of cool stuff. It was so amazing. And then, Rocksteady decided that they wanted you to experience how amazing it was at all times. And they made sure that you kept using it more and more and more and more, and Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm playing Tiny Tank on the PS1. The Batmobile went from being one of my favorite things to one of my least favorite things in this game quite quickly because of how overdone it was. There were way too many missions that depended on using it to fight off the Arkham Knight's militia, and it actually took away from feeling like Batman at times and made you feel more like one of Arkham Knight's tank soldiers. Using this thing as a traversal tool with a little bit of puzzle solving and combat here and there would have been great. But as the story advances and Gotham falls into more and more chaos, it becomes a plot device. You can't progress in the game without using the Batmobile to take down the tanks that are blocking the next region, or to clear out the basement of Wayne Tower before you can make it inside. It becomes extremely problematic and overused, and at one point, it even ruins something that could have been the best part of the game. So let me talk about that. As you progress on the main story journey of figuring out who the Arkham Knight is and eventually stopping Scarecrow, your encounters with the Knight intensify. He has more militia, more tanks, and a weapon called the Cloudburst that unleashes the fear toxin throughout the entire city. All of these things need to be destroyed in order to take him down, and they have to be destroyed, you guessed it, with the Batmobile. This in and of itself isn't too problematic, but with how much the game forces you to use the Batmobile up until this point, by the time you get here, you're kind of over it. You've been fighting tanks for ages, and you just want to play as Batman again, but you don't get that chance. After hours and hours of build-up, you finally get a chance to take on the Arkham Knight and destroy the Cloudburst. You get to face the enemy that's been making your life so much harder. It's time for the first main story boss fight. How exciting. But this boss fight, if you could even call it that, was absolutely miserable. You have to sneak around a restricted part of the city and fire pot shots at the Arkham Knight's convoy of tanks. Once you fire a shot, he finds you, and you have to drive around, dodging his missiles until he magically forgets about you for some reason, to repeat the process until you have killed his entire convoy and you could take him on one by one. Then, after you get him alone, you have to hit him with 4 powerful shots on the Cloudburst tank in order to take him out. But every time you hit him, he chases you at Rocket League speeds and fires a missile at you that has the range of an orbital cannon. It's a process of shooting a shot, driving away with wacky control mechanics, running into shit, eventually getting away and repeating the process yet again. This boss fight was the second most underwhelming part of the entire game. After hours of chasing this villain, this is what you're rewarded with. No badass Batman boss fights, just goddamn Tiny Tank on the PS1 again. It's one thing if the controls of the Batmobile were actually good, but it's wonky to drive at high speeds and the camera angles always change to these weird ones during fights, making it so much harder to know what's going on. Plus, since you're so tired of this car at this point in the game, you just want it over with. Remember how I said that this fight was the second most underwhelming part? Well, let me touch on the first one. After this miserably long fight, you finally get the Arkham Knight and he disappears. So you did all of that for no payoff other than removing the Cloudburst. It was miserable. This could have easily been the best and most rewarding part of this game. The payoff of all your hard work, but it gets shit on by a giant battle tank forced down your throat. And it gets worse. To go back a step, there's Gordon, the guy who Batman works with the Gotham Police Department. At one point in the story, a bit earlier, Scarecrow captures his daughter, and Gordon is so irritated that he goes after Scarecrow himself. So after this Cloudburst fight, Batman finds out that Gordon got captured while trying to do this. So Batman goes down into the tunnels to track him down and runs into the Arkham Knight yet again. Oh cool, maybe it's time for a real boss fight. Nope. This one is an even worse Batmobile experience that once again feels like you're playing not as Batman, but as the Batmobile itself. Basically, the Knight is in this giant drill thing like the damn Underminer from The Incredibles, and he's chasing you around these tunnels trying to drill you into pieces or something. So you have to lead him around this maze and into multiple sections of bombs to destroy him. This goes on for way too long, and it's way too unenjoyable to even be considered a boss fight. At this point, the game is 0-2 with the secondary antagonist boss fights, and it's extremely disappointing. A graph of my enjoyment levels with this game kinda looks like this, and at this point, I was right here. The most disappointing part of the entire game. But I will say, it does get a bit better, because the Batmobile gets destroyed, so you don't have to worry about it, right? Wait, what's that? You're telling me that Lucius built an exact replica of the Batmobile, and that you have a second one that's instantly gonna take the place of the first one that was destroyed. Oh, and also there's about to be a massive assault on the police station with 1 trillion more tanks to fight. How convenient. You see my point. Too much Batmobile, too little Batman. But I'm not gonna blabber on. I just need you to understand how this is such a flaw in this game. But let's get back on a more positive note, fill in the rest of the gaps of the plot, and see how this game, even with these major flaws, still comes out as an outstanding title. Now that you have a foundation of what your goals and objectives are in this game, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the development of the story itself. All of these people leave the city because they're scared of the fear toxin, which leaves a bunch of hoodlums and an understaffed police force. So as you go along with the objective of neutralizing the Arkham Knight and catching Scarecrow, you have a bit more work to do. In between these main goals, you work alongside the police and help to bring peace to this chaotic city. You'll be dealing with many more popular Batman villains and trying to prevent them from doing their dubious deeds. You have to stop Penguin from distributing weapons by destroying them and capturing him. You have to stop Two-Face from robbing the city's banks. You have to stop Firefly from burning down all the city's fire stations, and a lot more. All of the side missions related to these franchise villains are sick, and I actually really did enjoy them. They broke up the main story a bit and helped even further with the immersion and the experience of really feeling like Batman. But some of these side missions were not it, and guess what? The ones that weren't were the ones that involved the Batmobile. Neutralizing bombs and fighting through waves of these infinitely generated tanks was not fun, especially after how much you had to do it in the story. Chasing armored APCs in the Batmobile to blow them up was also not fun. And the Riddler challenge that involved driving the Batmobile, well, not gonna lie, I actually had fun with those. Any of the missions that focus on the other DC villains were fuego, and the ones that weren't were a bit of a chore. Overall though, I do give the side missions a pretty solid rating, and I do think they added to the game a lot and helped with the world building. The biggest percentage of the side missions involve the Riddler and Catwoman. You see, Catwoman is trapped with an explosive collar that needs multiple keys to unlock, so you spend a lot of time going around and completing Riddler's puzzles and challenges in order to get the keys. I know some people are mixed on these, but I will say I really did enjoy them. Usually puzzles in a non-puzzle based game are really lame, and they make being an accountant seem like an exciting job. Usually they're created as an afterthought. But the Riddler challenges in Arkham Knight are very unique and creative, and they really got me thinking. One of the best designed puzzles that I saw in the game was the one where I had to lower the Batmobile into this rotating cylinder full of spikes, passing different levels and maneuvering around them with my winch in order to get what I needed. The whole concept of this was super unique, and these creative puzzles genuinely made me want to keep doing the Riddler challenges throughout the game. They were a good way to break everything else up, and I do think they were created to keep people playing for longer periods of time when they wanted to do something entirely different, and they excel for that reason. Catching Riddler is a lot of fun. So you bounce around between these side missions to split up the story a bit. But as the story comes to a close, you aren't going to want to skip it. As I said before, the curve of how much I liked this game went like this. The reason it spiked so much after the irritation that was the tank fights and those annoying-ass sentry guns was because of the resolution and ending of this game. Basically, after the Arkham Knight destroys your Batmobile, you try to rescue Gordon and he confronts you. But the Knight is still there. Then you get into a bit of a skirmish and you'll have to fight the Knight. This boss fight was pretty underwhelming too, and it was really just you jumping around, dodging his sniper laser, and punching a few times in between. Honestly, the combat sucked at this point. But this is where the writing really excels, and there's going to be some major spoilers at this point, so if you want to skip them, go to this point in the video. I will give you 3 seconds. After taking him out, you unmask the Arkham Knight to find out that he's the other Robin. Joker brainwashed Jason Todd into thinking that Batman abandoned him, and Batman was under the impression that Jason Todd was dead for all of this time. So a misunderstanding happens, and Batman, while being haunted by hallucinations of Joker killing Jason, is also being hunted by Jason himself, enacting his revenge as the Arkham Knight. So after this slightly anticlimactic boss fight, Batman clears the air of what's happening and Jason vanishes. Now it's time to deal with Scarecrow. This is where it gets good. Throughout this process, Scarecrow captures the other Robin, named Tim Drake, and uses him as a hostage for Batman to reveal himself to the world. So Scarecrow makes Batman give up all of his gadgets and weapons and get into a sketchy truck to meet up with him. Batman's gonna do it because he wants to save Robin. But on the way, Batman has another hallucination where he's fighting one of his last battles with Joker, trying to keep him out of his head. Can he do it? Or will he finally snap and break his rule of not killing anyone? He ends up breaking the rule, and that mental manifestation of killing is what pushes Batman over the edge. Joker has taken control of his psyche and now lives inside Batman, replacing the good guy who he once was. Arriving at Scarecrow's location, Batman's tied up and he's willing to lose everything to save his friends. He's unmasked, and the public watches his true identity come out into the world. Everyone now knows that he's Bruce Wayne. This is the end of Batman. Then, Scarecrow injects the fear toxin into Batman's blood, where the world could see him break down, freaking out about his biggest fears on camera. But little does Scarecrow know that he actually injected the toxin into the Joker, because Batman lost that mental battle. So this is where the coolest part of the entire game takes place from a story perspective. That toxin, instead of showing Batman's biggest fears, now shows Joker's biggest fears. The fear of being forgotten. The fear of Batman. You now get to play as Joker, going through and killing everyone who did him wrong. It looks like life is good for you. But then, that godforsaken toxin kicks in and you fight Joker as the Batman to regain control of your mind and put this vision to rest. This fear toxin is what scares Joker out of Batman's psyche, and it gives Batman the strength to fight him and become who he truly was once again. He wins, and he locks Scarecrow up with the help of Jason Todd, who is once again a good guy on Batman's team. From a writing perspective, this is outstanding. The conflict gets resolved perfectly, and this is one of the most satisfying endings that I've ever gotten in a video game. There's a bit more mystery involved and a bit more detail, with a special ending happening after you complete all of the side missions, but I'm going to cut that off here. The writing and storytelling in this game is truly outstanding, and while there were some cringy parts, just like any game, Arkham Knight is a beautiful Batman story and one of my personal favorites of all time. This writing and all of the characters seen in the main story and side missions make this game truly awesome. But what is even more awesome is the non-Euclidean geometry thrown in throughout various parts of this game. Without getting into the specific scientific explanation of what that is, because I'm not a high school teacher, let me just tell you this. Non-Euclidean geometry is basically when traditional laws of geometry don't apply. If you walk into a room that's obviously a square, you would expect that you can turn around and leave through the door you just entered. That door would take you back to what you just came from. Or if you see something happening, you would be able to turn around and it's still there behind you when you turn back around. Batman Arkham Knight, to really make you feel like you're hallucinating with a madman inside your brain, throws these laws out the window. Especially in a lot of the Joker-based scenes where he's obviously in your head, the way things appear and disappear will keep you interested 100% of the time. You could watch something happening in a scene, turn around, and it changes to something else. But when you turn back around, Joker's there too, and he's always right where you don't expect him to be. This is especially powerful in the ending of the game when you play as Joker. As you're experiencing Joker's biggest fears, you find yourself in the sketchy abandoned Arkham Asylum. These hallucinations are intensified when the rooms that you are in keep changing. You go into one, watch the scene unfold, turn around to leave, and the exit changes into something else, seamlessly. As the fear in Joker's mind intensifies, he begins to see Batman appear. And as you're fighting off these symbolic stone statues of Batman to keep your inner Joker alive, every time you turn around, there's more of them. You feel like you're going insane, and from a design perspective, this is actually impressive how seamlessly it's done. Seeing this non-Euclidean geometry throughout the game added significantly to the setting and the story, especially with the mental aspect that comes with it. Rocksteady really tried something new with this, and it turned out to be one of the most awesome parts of this entire game. Usually I don't pace my game reviews like this, but Arkham Knight has some really cool and unique stuff going for it, so I wanted to talk about all of those unique things before I dive into the basics. Since you're playing as Batman, you're going to want to feel like you can do combat like Batman can. And this game has the same style of combat that you saw in the PS4 Spider-Man game, but with a bit more complexity. There's a lot of focus on gadgets in this game, and while you can chain brutal takedowns and traditional combat together like you can in Spider-Man, you can also throw in a twist by using your gadgets either before or during combat. One of the most strategic gadgets in your arsenal is the Disruptor, which you can fire at enemy weapons and tools before your encounters in order to prevent them from working. Then there's electric charges, batarangs, explosives, and a lot more that you can use to make the combat a bit easier. This combat is extremely smooth and rewarding, and I have to say genuinely, it's the most badass combat I've ever played in a video game. If you can think of one that looks cooler than this, please tell me in the comments, because I genuinely cannot. You feel like Batman 100% of the time, and the combat really reinforces your position as a badass detective superhero. The chains and combos and cool takedowns are just so freaking awesome. And while I did enjoy the combat a lot of the time, there were some major flaws with the enemy design that made me get a bit irritated sometimes. First, there were these sentries that would laser your ass if you stepped into their vision cone. This is fine by itself because it just makes it to where you have to change up your approach and be a bit more stealthy, but when combined with some of the other factors like shitty room layouts or other enemy types that you can't knock out as easily with stealth, it made for a hassle. Also, it's kind of annoying dealing with the electric guys and the guys with riot shields, especially when they're combined with a large number of other enemies. Because the thing is, when you hit the electric guys, you get stunned, so it completely messes up the flow of the combat and makes combos a bit harder to pull off. The riot shield guys are even more annoying, especially for me playing on mouse and keyboard, because the combo that you have to do to take them out is a hassle. Like you have to hit middle mouse button and then space twice and then left click. I don't know what the fuck this is this a cheat code? Plus, with this button combo, chaining it together with a big group of enemies is pretty much impossible. And sometimes the combinations of people would just piss me off. Like when I was on the roof of the police department towards the end of the game, and I had to deal with electric guys shocking me while I was trying to take out the riot shield guys, while being charged by brutes who also need a special move to take out, while dealing with healers picking up the people that I already knocked out. That part was actually infuriating for me, and I think that was the only time that I actually rage quit. But I will say, this wasn't much of a problem overall. The combat is still really enjoyable, and it's the coolest combat I've ever seen in a game. Everything that I've mentioned so far in this video is held together by the characters and the cast who plays them. If a story-based game is good but the characters suck, there's little to no incentive to continue through the story. But the characters in Arkham Knight are awesome representations of the DC Universe characters, and they have those characteristics that you would expect. Joker is extremely entertaining, and his dialogue and writing is outstanding. Same goes for Batman, obviously, and all the other characters in the main story, DLC, and side missions. The only reason that these characters are so good is because of what is probably one of the most solid lineups in voice acting history. We have Mark Hamill as the Joker, with one of the best voice acting performances I've ever heard in a game. There's Kevin Conroy as Batman, which is the same guy who voiced a lot of the old animated Batman films and shows. Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad as Gordon, Nolan North as Penguin, who played Nathan Drake in Uncharted, and more. This game even has Troy Baker, the guy who played Joel in The Last of Us, Booker DeWitt in Bioshock Infinite, and Pagan in Far Cry 4, as the Arkham Knight. This cast blows my mind, and there's even more impressive names in the credits that I did not expect to see. Their acting is amazing, and it makes the immersive world, unique story, and cool characters seem even more realistic. I have one last thing that I need to talk about in this video, and then I'll let you go. This is arguably the most important part of this entire game, and it's something that can truly make or break a video game. The little things that you don't see. Good game design will make it to where you don't have to think about some things. If you have to Google everything or try to figure out what you have to do at every point, a game gets a bit tedious. Arkham Knight has some of the best little design choices that make it an exceptional experience, and most of them won't even be picked up on by most people. If you're confused about what I'm talking about, let me give you some examples. When I was in the orphanage doing a Riddler challenge, I didn't really understand what I was supposed to do, so I eventually got irritated and tried to leave the room. Instead of just not allowing me to leave, or leaving and saving the quest for later, like a lot of games would do, Riddler came on over the speaker and roasted me for not solving the riddle and gave me a hint. I was still confused, so I tried to leave again, and he straight up got mad at me and told me, "Forget about the riddle, just go through the damn door."
No. You think pretending you can't do it will let you off the hook? Pretending? I know that you're not that stupid. Stupid. There. Stupid. It's done. It's done.
Instead of the game making it a challenge for me, they made it a lot of fun, and this was one of the most memorable experiences I've had in the game. Expanding upon this further, the little bits of Joker showing me what to do or suggesting a new approach to me was another major highlight of the game. It just made everything so much easier for me when I got confused, and it was such a nice little touch. Also, things just work how you expect them to. When the Arkham Knight had me cornered and I was trapped, I saw the Batmobile behind him, remembered that the game told me I can control it, and did that to save myself. I was never told to do that, but it just made so much sense and it worked. Things just constantly make sense in this game, and that makes it so much fun. There's a lot of other stuff I could talk about in this video, but I don't want to ramble. I think the stuff that I have mentioned so far does a good job at explaining the ins and outs of this game to you, and I think you understand why it's such an awesome but flawed game. It's still one of my favorite games of all time, and I will definitely be trying to get all of the achievements in the near future. But my script for this video is already 23 pages long, and I'm not trying to write a book, so I'm going to cut myself off here. Ultimately though, the game is 100% worth the money, especially at the discounted price it's currently at, and I guarantee you that you'll have a good time playing it. So you should definitely check it out and buy it for yourself, but I suggest playing it with a controller and not a mouse and keyboard. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and maybe even share this video with a Batman fan. I promise you, they will like it. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for my video on GTA 4 in the near future. I will see you guys next time, and peace.